Hello, my friends. Hello, my life warriors, wherever you are in the world. Welcome to the Day In, Day Out podcast. Oh, this is episode 88. Today I am very fortunate, happy to have. This is kind of like take two with Abhishek. Yesterday we had, how can I say, the internet gods were not kind to us, but today we are trying to get this down and make it happen. How are you today, sir?
I'm good. I similarly pray that the internet gods are in our favor. And it is a bit funny how we're in take two of all this, but it feels natural now. It feels like we've done this before, so this should be way easier.
I see. Yes, we've bonded. Our, our trials and our adversities, we have bonded. And like someone's going to most really go first world troubles, but that's another story. How are things today with you?
Things are good. Things are good. I have taken a very slow start to my day. I had to treat myself a bit this morning. Long yoga session, made some pancakes, like had a really chill start, and then just been go, go, go since then. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. I'm doing well. It's like today has been a chill day. Started off with the gym, lifted heavy things as you do. And yeah, smiles all around. Like I'm sure DOMs will hit me later where I'll be like, I'm in so much pain. But nevertheless, I'm smiling. I'm smiling. Uh, Speaking of yoga, my lady, we're doing these 30-day challenges.
Mm-hmm.
So basically, last month we were doing 15,000 steps a day to basically, get that little bit of extra exercising as you do. We tried doing meditation and
Mm.
the whole thing. Let's just say that went down it didn't even get started. It was like took off and went mayday and went down hard. So, all we do now is we're still doing the 15,000 steps, but we've added on like a 30-second hug for each day. So sort of you know what I mean? Like being in each other's company for 24 hours a day. They tend to wear thin.
Yeah. That warms my heart though. I absolutely love that. I actually live my life by the 30-day challenge. I usually every month I'm doing something different. This month is actually a combination of very little snoozing when I wake up in the morning
Okay.
and meditation as well because I used to meditate regularly. I need to get back into it. And so I've been doing 10 to 20 minutes a day for the first couple of days, and then I'm going to up it to 30 minutes soon. But last month, my girlfriend and I did a diet: no sugar, no dairy, no wheat. And we survived.
Right.
We still like each other. I must make that known. It was rough going there for a moment.
Oh,
Um, and yeah, I mean, I love the challenges. I will tell you the one that I did that was one of the best that you can do during lockdown is I perfected the art of napping.
look, put it this way. Look, like I'll, I'll let you into a secret. Just be me and you, no one else. And I put it this way. My podcast set up like slash studio slash spare room. I've dedicated the bed in the spare room. It's got its own designation as the napping bed. So, so yeah, you just see me. I was like, okay, ah, hmm, oh, time for the napping bed. Yeah, it's just over there, and because I used to I'll walk next door into the main room, have a quick nap. I was like, there's a bed right there. It's not being used 90% of the time. It's my napping bed right now.
Yeah.
I am going to be ruined when I get back to work full time. Like going, yeah, can I have a nap? What?
What?
So yeah, I'm down with that. I'm down with that. So what else have you been the no dairy and yeah, this is the thing, no dairy. That must have been tough because it's literally everywhere. Same thing with wheat.
Sugar though, sugar's the kicker. Sugar is in everything. We didn't have like any ketchup. We couldn't eat certain crisps. Like there's sugar and peanut butter from M&S. So we were just really struggling on the sugar bit. We went out to eat, just eat out to help out.
Mm.
We went and we were those people that had to ask, is there any added sugar in any of the dishes that we were ordering? And then they had to say, well, this one thing that you really want does have some added sugar. We can't make it without that. And so we were like, crap, can't have it. So that was really tough because you really have to do your diligence. In that first week, you're going to go through withdrawal, kind of like if you like stop drinking alcohol and you're a bit grumpy after 6 days. That was a withdrawal on sugar. I was exhausted. I could barely get my workout in. I was like fumbling around the house. I think I was a little bit clumsy. And then as soon as you're out of that, it's smooth sailing. And I really highly recommend trying it for everybody. Like not permanently, it's damn near impossible to do, but
Yes, because like, yeah, it is like oxygen. It is everywhere. Yeah. But like this is the thing, I would find that very challenging, especially if you are working out, because you think about the amount of times you use sugar as that little bit of extra boost to get you.
mm-hmm.
Like you didn't do no caffeine as well, did you? Or
We did caffeine. So I would do a bit of coffee or like a green tea that would help a lot and give me just a little bit. But yeah, I mean, it's amazing what refined sugar does when you're like trying to get that energy, which is probably why kids go on sugar highs and we use it to fuel ourselves a bit. But my workouts I will say were really good by that third week. Like I was just I was like different level, really efficient. I was sweating less, all of it. And it wasn't super hot, but strangely enough, I felt great doing them.
what type of workouts were you doing?
So I have a little patio next to my spare room, nap room over here, and I was doing a lot of like resistance workouts with bands and pull-up bars and push-ups and stuff, and then I would do like a hit cardio in addition to that, and then I would also do like a day of yoga or a day of running just to mix it up. So I was kind of mixing across a bunch of different disciplines just to keep myself fresh. And yeah, I would do like 50 minutes of strength and cardio altogether without heavy weights, obviously, but with bands. And I felt great afterwards.
Yeah, no, like this is the thing. Like I got to say, I think over the sort of lockdown period, if you've had if you had access to a gym beforehand and that went away, again, like keeping that up, keeping like yourself motivated, it is difficult. Like there was like I got to say it was like me, I love my weight, and it was just like that was all gone. I had resistance bands myself and a kettlebell, a 20 kg kettlebell. Trying to work with that, it was like, okay, I'm getting a little bit bored with kettlebell. And like I spent a whole month just running sort of 15 miles a day. So it was like, yeah. But but the whole thing now, the gym's back, my running's gone out of the window. Yeah, look, if you tell me to run 10 miles, I'll do it, but I will not be happy with you. And I most really just want to like sit down and like go, I'm going to sleep right now, but I've got to get into training myself next year because I was meant to do the Paris Marathon this year.
Oh, me too.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah.
Yeah. Unfortunately cancelled, as you know. And like, yeah, so 2021 should be back. Fingers crossed.
Yeah, I don't know. I will say that winter of running was the first time I had done like proper like UK winter regular running schedule, and like the cold and the dark and the rain. It definitely builds a bit of character, but I regretted not using all of that because I was in best running shape I'd been in ages. I was cranking out 22 miles on the Sundays with like just a pair of gloves and some gels and like my ears covered and podcasts running through my head. Would wake up at like 5 a.m. and crank out 8 miles before work and then get into work and stuff. But yeah, now I'm just like, again, if you ask me to run a 10K, I might just be like, ugh, it's a bit much.
Yeah, no, but this is the thing, man. Like, are you gonna do next year, Paris Marathon, or you?
I was doing it with a group of colleagues. I think we're probably gonna give it a go. I don't know for sure, but I would want to. I put so much work into training this past winter that I don't know if I could do it again. I
Uh,
think
I think you should. I think you should. This is the whole thing. Like, I'm putting myself like, I've, I've gone like I've got one last sort of sugar encrusted glazed donut waiting for me to be consumed, and a Magnum bar later today. And like this is the thing, it's like going, yeah, once I have those, tomorrow it begins again. It begins again, having to put in the long miles and yeah, sort of get myself like ready for it, because I know what it's going to be like, because currently I'm living that furlough lifestyle.
Yeah.
So, like, don't get me wrong, I've been keeping myself busy doing the podcast and other things, but it's like, yeah, in a few short weeks, that's all gone. Like, part of me is like grateful for the time I've had off in furlough, but part of me is like, yeah, we need to move on, if you get what I mean. We need to get back to some sense of normality, which I, like, if you kind of look at the sort of politics and the numbers which are coming out, you kind of like go, you guys don't really have a clue. And like I say that about the British government, I say that about the American government, I say that about the Canadian, I say that about all governments around the world. It's just like, yeah, you want us to go back, like go back to your offices. And you're like going, but you're saying the numbers are going back up to sort of a May time infectious rate. Yeah, but go back to your offices. It's like,
Yeah.
come on now, think about it.
Something doesn't line up. Something doesn't line up. And I was talking to somebody today, and we both kind of agreed that because in both the US and the UK government, the conservative parties are a little bit more business oriented. They're like, go do things that are business friendly,
Mm.
but stop doing things that are really individual friendly. So like we'll open up gyms and bars and restaurants and get you back to work, but like don't six of you get in the same household, more than six of you be in the same household at once. And that just seems strange to me because there's the individual liberty and then there's a business side. But in a pandemic, I don't think it cares which one you're doing.
No, no, and like this is the thing. There were I can't remember. Like I think it was about 4 days, maybe 5 days ago, where they were like blaming young people for sort of gathering and having parties, like for like the increased infection rates. I was like thinking, but if you're opening up everything quote unquote gradually, bit by bit, that is going to naturally go up regardless.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and you're like kind of like, okay, but now you want to open up schools. You want to get people back to the offices as much as how many people will return, or how the sort of status quo is going to be, like where people are working from home. Because I know one friend of mine, his office basically went, the office is open. If you want to use it, great, but we're not expecting to see many of you until sort of next year in the office, you know what I mean, on a regular basis.
So my company went the other way with like Slack and Google and Facebook and all these big companies, and they just said the office is shut. Like, don't use it, don't come in. We're not allowing anybody in, and it's shut until at least next year. I think like Slack and Google have until June of next year to give people the ability to book a new home and live somewhere else for a year to like save some money and work remotely from wherever they want. But I have no like ideas about going into an office again until 2021. And if I'm honest, New Year's Eve will not be the end of coronavirus. Like it'll still be there on January 1st. So I mean, well, let's be honest. I'm talking like I probably won't be in an office for another 6 months after that, maybe even to June, probably until everybody's set or something radical happens with the disease that hasn't happened yet.
Yeah, that is quite amazing, because like when you're saying like, yeah, you're out of the office until like June next year, because like I I think everyone's sort of general consensus, and like I'm not saying this as I've gone around, everyone went with a clipboard. Okay, when do you think we're gonna come back? But everyone I've spoken to, and like, you know what I mean, my sort of small demographic of friends, like they're all talking about Easter time next year, when things are sort of going to be coming back to sort of normal. But when I hear you like, oh yeah, June, it's like, okay, I'm aware it's not going to be over come like the 1st of January. Hey, 2021. What? You remember that thing we were all panicking about? Yeah, it's gone. It's finished. It's over. Yeah, yeah, it's going to be around, and I think people are talking about second wave, and you know what I mean. If there is one, that's very concerning for everyone.
I mean, I think no, not to freak anybody out. I think we're in it. Like if you look at our graphs now and you kind of look at the way that it's rising the last couple of weeks, like we're at that early stage of a second wave. Now, can we flatten the second wave out the way we did the first? I hope so. But we also have better testing. We have more testing capacity. We know that certain people won't be as sick with it, or at least we hope in the short term they won't be. We don't know what like long-term comorbidity of it all could be, but I mean, the one thing I look at that makes me feel really good is in the UK, the death rate is super low. Like any death is bad, but the fact that there were like 2 to 6 in the last week was really good. That shows that we can treat it, and our ways of like being therapeutic around it are a bit better, and the hospitals won't be stressed out. So if you need to go in and take care of like getting your new heart valve put in because people were putting that stuff off when coronavirus was at its peak, you can actually go do that and it'll be fine. And there won't be some sort of like associated death number anymore.
Yep. Good. I like that. Very reassuring. I can feel everyone like there's just the two of us in this. Right? Yeah, there you go. But yeah, like this is the thing. Through this like sort of crazy time, like what have you been kind of doing to sort of like relax apart from sort of, you know what I mean, exercising? Have you been watching sort of Netflix or anything like that?
You know what? Not much. My girlfriend and I have made it a point not to binge watch a lot of stuff. We have had our days.
Ah,
Like we did do the Tiger King thing. We went through this amazing 4-part miniseries called Unorthodox, which I recommend everybody see. It's super quick and it's a good watch. But yeah, we've been our guilty pleasure is like a Modern Family, so we'll watch all the episodes from season 1 onwards because it'll take you like a very long time to do that. You watch maybe 3 at a time, maybe, and you're out. But we have been really trying to do other things. So we met in January. So that's the interesting thing. First date in January,
yeah.
right? And when lockdown hit, and when we were all trying to figure out how to like associate this crazy new world, we realized that we were still, getting to know each other a lot. So a lot of that time was just spent getting to know each other, like just spending some like evenings where we would be chatting or listening to music that each other liked. And it was strange because I wouldn't say that it was the easiest way to date somebody in a pandemic, but it certainly erased a lot of the distractions of other things. Like I wasn't traveling to see Europe as an American that I was keen to do, and she wasn't, going to see all of her friends and having a really social calendar. So weirdly, this pandemic has brought us way closer. So I count that as like a really big blessing of everything.
Oh, you're talking about hyper acceleration right there. Like, you know what I mean? I think you're most already like your relationship might be like 9 months old, but it's most already double or triple that. I think it's because of time out of time like being
Yeah.
like January. It's amazing. But
I
like
mean, we did the math by the end of this year, judging on the way that everything seems to be moving and the planned travels that we both have in some way, shape, and form, we will probably spend 3/4 of the year together, given that we just met each other.
no, but wow. Now that is wow. You're talking about like sort of high school time together, if you get what I mean. Because like you think about it, like I'm in a relationship with someone, and you're talking normally you get the weekend and occasional sort of nights here and there a week, and then it could be you might not see him for a couple of weeks, and then you know what I mean, just
Yeah.
modern living. But yeah, that is crazy. But you know what I mean. I raise a glass to you, Pepsi Max, to yeah your newfound relationship, and may it sail long into the night, as they say. Brilliant.
Thank you.
Yeah, no worries. Oh, I tell you this, when you mention Modern Family, all I've got to say is if my lady was in your company, yeah, she'll most probably make you sit down and watch a whole season. She loves that show of like love and no money. Yeah.
So there's a level of responsibility that we both put upon each other that we say like, okay, it's 11:30 and it's a school night. Like we gotta get into bed and like call it. But easily it could just be like a 1 a.m. binge. But it's a little bit of like tenacity on both of our parts.
Because I go, look, I'm your sponsor. You're my sponsor. You got to let it go, baby. You got to let it go. You can't be watching that too much. One thing I would say you should watch. Like, I don't like. Are you a vegetarian or a meat eater?
I do eat meat. I try not to eat tons anymore, but I also don't have beef anymore, which has been interesting.
Okay, well, I'll just simply say is like, yeah, if you watch this TV show, I think it might break you on many fronts. Like, Chef's Table. Uh,
Oh.
Oh yes, Chef Table, and they're doing it on barbecue. I've got to say, the cinematography alone, I was like literally like, why couldn't I book it? Like, my lady was like, she was like, "Do you want me to leave?" I was like, I looked at her like, "Yeah, if you could go by and get me some barbecue right now, that'd be great." I got to say, fantastic. The storytelling behind it. Oh yeah,
Great.
uh,
That's great.
all of it, fantastic. I'm 3 episodes in, and like I've got to say, yeah, I think I've got maybe 2 more after that. I'm not too sure. I'm not, and if you like, yeah, you
I will
don't,
say this.
yeah,
I've watched Chef's Table before.
oh
I have
yeah,
two very good friends of mine from New York named Neil and Nisha came out here and were like, "Hey, we're going to Sicily. Do you want to join?" And I said, "Yeah, of course." And they said, "We're going specifically because we want to see Sicily, but also there's a town called Noto, which has this tiny little like desserts cafe." And they saw it on Chef's Table and they were like, "Let's just go." So they made this like epic journey, almost like a pilgrimage to this place that had the best Sicilian desserts I've ever had in my entire life. Insane. I think it was in the dessert season, like season 4. So I started watching the show and I was like, I'm just curious of like other places that are near me that I could try. And as a result, I've made 2 separate trips to places that are on Chef's Table, specifically for the restaurants. One being Fäviken, which is in the first season, which is out in, it's kind of in this random place in Sweden near a ski resort, but it's basically a hunting lodge called Yarpen, Sweden. And you fly into Norway, you drive 2.5 hours, you sit in this tiny restaurant that's out in the middle of nowhere. You just have like 25 courses
hmm.
and a ton of wine. And that's just the experience. And it was honestly one of the best meals of my entire life. Like to this day, it's going to be hard to ever top that.
Uh, all I've got to say, wow. All I've got to say is, yeah, if I had the funds or I could come up with a business plan to like just visit these places around the world, it's like, yeah, okay, I'm vlogging with a camera. Like, this is one of the places I've seen on Chef's Table. Yes, like all I've got to say is I've got to go to Texas because this is where the first place
You
was.
do.
I like, look, I don't get me wrong. Like, I apologize to all Australians out there, but you're good. But Texas is better
Oh, yeah.
than what I've seen. And look, I'm saying this, born and raised in the UK, and we can't do barbecue for shit. It's like, yeah, we don't have the work for it. But yeah.
No, Texas, every time I go to Texas, because I oftentimes get there for work, or I used to rather go there for work, I make a meal stop at barbecue somewhere and I
Mm.
always walk away about half as fast as I walked there with like a different shirt that might be like a little bit bigger on me because I've just filled my belly with barbecue.
Yeah, no. If I got the meat sweats really black badly, I could turn a black like t-shirt translucent. Just like, you're okay. Just like, just like little cloth. Just just like, what's wrong with you? I'm just gonna just sit back. Yeah.
Just don't talk. Just shh. I'm just gonna be here. Gonna be in my own head. You know how you said you couldn't meditate? There you go. There's your meditation.
Oh yeah. It's called a meat coma. Like, this is the thing. Like, talking about Texas for one moment. Like, okay, like the sort of like one of the godfathers of podcasts, moving out to Austin, Texas. Like, that sort of pilgrimage from California now to other parts of the country. Like, I don't know if you were in California for a time, and then,
Decade.
yeah,
1 decade. Yeah.
decade, yeah. Like, do you think if you were still in California, would you be in the mind to move away from California? Because with all the sort of tax rates and like the sort of like things which have changed over this sort of lockdown period, do you think California would be still the place for you?
If I was still in California and it was the pandemic that we're in now and I'd been there as long as I'd been there, I don't know that I would have actively decided to leave San Francisco. I had a really good setup when I was there. My younger brother and I owned our place. We were in a really, really middle of city neighborhood. It was kind of rough, but for us, it was like home. However, I do believe that there might have been an impetus for us to leave San Francisco after about 6 months of it. So right away we would have been like, fine, maybe we'll go to Chicago and stay with family. Maybe we'll go to Ohio and stay with family. But now we're talking September and it's been March and you're living in San Francisco. That city is in a way, it needs a lot of help to become what it once was. And by that, I mean, I love the city. There's a map. You can't see it sitting like directly above me of San Francisco. Um, the only way I can say it, I think San Francisco lost its soul a little bit in exchange for a lot of money. And you see it when you go to these big firms in San Francisco that have a line of Ubers outside waiting for their employees to go home. And then at the end of that line of Ubers is a tent village. And I think what SF needs is a little bit of come to Jesus kind of moment where all that money decides to leave for a minute, all that necessity to be close decides to dissipate for a minute, and everybody starts to realize that the city was not really built for the influx of the human beings that it later on had. So I think at this point, I might have considered a move, obviously within the bounds of what I was allowed to do and what would be appropriate and what would be safe in coronavirus, but I might have considered going and staying in Chicago where I have family. I might have considered moving to LA where I have very good friends. I might have just considered taking some space, like getting into a part of the country that had enough space. I'm not a California kid. I'm born and raised in Ohio, so the weather doesn't bother me really. Like I kind of like autumn, and I don't mind winter. But Californians, I know, would find that hard.
That, come on now. Damn. like that. That's a new era of cold. Like
Mm-hmm.
Your cold winters are nothing to people from Siberia and Russia.
True. But I went to, like, the thing is, I did 4 years of university outside of Chicago next to a lake. And so you got lake effect snow, you got lake winds. Basically, when the winter hits, you got to have boots, you got to have snow pants, you got to bundle everything up. You're going to be blown over, can't bike anymore. Like, I've seen it. I've been through some crazy stuff. But I mean, this is whatever we have here is like just the lead up to winter.
No, like, because like depending on what time of year you get me, especially in the winter months, you'll hear me like bitch and complain, and there's like grumble. Doesn't mean anything.
For me, the sun is the hardest bit. I'll say that. The fact that the sun is down for so long in the winter, that really gets me after a while. And I think emotionally I take that pretty hard. But that's probably pretty normal given how I see people act here in December and January.
Oh yeah, but that's right. If you want to go to a trippy place in the world, go to Oslo, either in winter or summer. Yeah, that'll freak you out. There is no normal in that country. Like, I remember going to a event called North Shipping. They hold it every 2 years. It's where they get the whole shipping industry to descend all down in one place, and they have their big event. And like, I was out with new work colleagues, and it was like 11 o'clock at night, like still sunny. Got into the club around about midnight. It was like the sun didn't. It just got to a point, and it hung there.
Yeah.
So it was like, you don't really need street lights, but you kind of do. But it's like, yeah. And then I got out of the club something like 3 o'clock in the morning to go to change and go to the airport, and it was bright and sunny. I was like, nah, crazy biscuits.
Oh man.
Like, sort of jumping back with the like California side of things, especially with like San Fran. Like, one of the things which I was kind of surprised at, and like, this is, I think when I first heard this, it must have been about a year and a half ago. Like, yeah, if you had something like $120,000, you were making that annually. You weren't actually cutting it. You were like basically considered on the sort of poverty line type thing, which, like, don't get me wrong, like, I hear $120,000, like, even if with the like price conversion, that's 100 grand over here right now. In UK pounds. Like, it kind of blows my mind that, you know what I mean, that's like, yeah, 125 grand doesn't mean jack.
Yeah, having that kind of money in San Francisco makes you one of the average people. It's an expensive city. The ideas behind where you live and what you pay to eat and what taxi or an Uber costs are way different. But here's a story for you that's kind of crazy. There's an idea called below market rate when it comes to real estate. Like if you're someone who is below a certain earning every year,
Yeah.
then you're considered someone who's like needs below market rate to purchase a house. I think below market rate at the time that I'm telling the story was, one of the higher things in the world. There was a player for the Golden State Warriors basketball team. He was on the league minimum as a player. So not Steph Curry, obviously. I can't remember his name exactly. He actually was below market rate in his earnings because what he made was, I think, like $75,000 or $80,000 a year, and the below market rate value was like $82,500 for a single person or something insane like that. So this guy, professional basketball player, obviously he pays very different attention to his day to day. Like a lot of food might be paid for him through this, that, and the other, whatever it is. But this guy technically had to go through a different housing system to purchase a house and would get like a 2-bedroom in something of a cheaper neighborhood because he worked a job in California that just did not earn as much as the other people, but he happened to be a professional basketball player.
Okay, that's different. that is madness. Oh God, he's like, yeah, I play for the Golden State Warriors. Yeah, you know what I mean. Yeah, 2 rings. Yeah, gonna make it. I didn't get 3, but you know what I mean. Yeah, we got the all-time record. Yeah, how do you feel now, Bulls? And like, you just got Jordan like 6 rings. Now back off. That's like going, yeah. But I'm gonna have to get a mortgage on a lower rate. I don't make enough money. But you're a Golden State Warrior, son.
Yeah, yeah.
That is mad.
Now to flip that on you a little bit, imagine now that you're one of the highest paid female basketball players and they put you in California and they already make less than that guy anyways. Imagine that you're the MLS teams and so on, especially the women who are making way less. Like ultimately it's impossible for someone to live in San Francisco and play for a team in San Francisco unless you are just killing it in the game.
Yeah, no, that is madness because look, if you're a sports star, look, MLS, not that well, it's not going to cut it because look, female sports at this present time, because they don't have the same sort of marketing exposure, like same market share just in general, they're not going to make as much money. Maybe in 10 years time, maybe a little bit longer, maybe quicker, you never know. But no, that's like, no, I don't actually see how a city can work like that. And look, I live in London, which is like one of the most expensive cities on the planet itself. And you know what I mean? I think that is on the verge of not working that well as well with regards to sort of rents and stuff like this. But I think it might be just slightly better than San Francisco.
It's way better. It's weirdly way better. London is a much more vast city, which is to my point earlier. San Francisco itself is not ready for the influx of people because it's a small city. It's 7 miles by 7 miles. The amount of distance that you cover in San Francisco compared to London is very, very different. And then the hub of it is even smaller than that. But to the sports thing and in London, and here's a really fun story for you. Apparently, and this is something I heard, I think on Freakonomics on their podcast, was I think in the 1920s in the UK, there was a rise in women's football. So much so that women's football would sell out 53,000 seats to their stadiums, which at the time was like gargantuan and completely insane. But as a result of that and some really insane measures that different lobbying arms in the US or in the UK rather made to FIFA, women's soccer or football was banned fully in the UK as a professional sport, fully banned. And as a result, it never really caught up globally. Just the sport of women's soccer is very important, but it never caught up to men's football. And a lot of people kind of believe, and I'd love to have your take on this, because the idea that they've purported around this is an idea of reparations, where the whole female sport deserves some sort of back payment on the fact that they were limited in playing their sport for so long that now their level of commercialization was less than the men's, though it could have been as high because at the time it was.
Now,
and the word reparations is a loaded word.
yes,
I realize that.
yeah,
It's not my word. It's from the episode, but that's why I thought it was interesting because they were drawing corollaries with what obviously reparations is normally meant to people.
yeah, like reparations. Like like my little get out clause. I'm not qualified to answer that, but I would say, if anything, with regards to women's like football, like in America, yeah, it's absolutely huge, and that's down to the sort of college scene where, like, look, I don't know why American sports is not like, well, American teams, national teams are not dominating literally everything just because of the way the collegiate system is set up. It's just geared to just pump out superstars time and time again. Over here in the UK with women's football, it's basically it's just starting out in some regards, because like it's been about 10, maybe 15 years where they've like gone, okay, we're taking football serious. And like, this is the thing, my team, Liverpool, like it was about, I'm going to say 10 years ago, they actually put forward the team. Before that, it was Arsenal ladies dominating all the way through. And that was because there was none of the big teams were taking it pretty much seriously. Now,
Mm-hmm.
City's got a team. I think Man United's got a team. All of the teams are like getting there. But
What's wild on that though is that it was fully banned until 1971.
yeah,
So a woman like an Arsenal could not in 1967 put a team together that was women. They just were not allowed. It was technically illegal in FIFA's laws. And FIFA, we know, is like this, has a lot of things that needs to fix about itself. But obviously, that's just rough for them.
like the whole thing is like with them banning it, and I don't understand why they would, because okay, different era, different time, and yeah, I think they were just, commercially speaking, just very small-minded and didn't see the sort of potential of it all. Now that's different. If there is some real investment, and like what would be a real big help for the women's game, if they just allow it to be televised across everywhere. No payments, no nothing like that, just be televised, just to get the exposure up, to build up the interest. And when you can sort of fill up a stadium like Anfield, Old Trafford, like the Emirates, with people like fans who will come in to watch the women's team, then you can sort of like go, okay, maybe we can put it behind the paywall to like help increase those like the wages on a sort of day-to-day basis. But until then, there's not enough exposure for women. Like you might see like the Women's World Cup, like it was televised over here, but it like the BBC had the rights, but it was to little or no fanfare whatsoever. So
here's a crazy stat for you to sort of bookend this conversation. The women's team in the US that won the World Cup this year, they made less money in the year than the male team of 2018 that didn't make it to the World Cup.
yeah, I heard, like, I got a little snippet of that, because I think the women took a fixed like contract deal where it was like, we want a fixed contract, that's it. And if they just went with the same contracts as the men, they would have made so much more money. I might be wrong about that.
I don't know the specifics, but yeah, that's interesting if that's the case. It seems very strange overall, just like the winners, the best team in the world makes less money than the similar countrymen who couldn't even get into the tournament.
But like you look at it this way, right? Like if England won the World Cup tomorrow, like, okay, money wise, commercial, like for the best of the team, they most probably will be a ad man's dream for about 6 months to a year, and then it's gone. But individually, player wise, they're not making anywhere as much as they are playing for their individual clubs. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So they're not going to be like, it's very hard to like look at it and go, I'm a player for on the England team. I've also played for one of the top 6 clubs. I get X amount, like, be it 5 figures, high 5 figures, 6 figures a week, and I get paid a couple of grand a match to play in the national team. Apart from that little bit of prestige, which if you won the Premiership, you get a hell of a lot more prestige.
Yeah.
You won the Champions League, you get a hell of a lot more prestige. And like, yeah, World Cup, every player would say they would want to have a World Cup medal. But I would say they're not going to be, like, if you told them you can win the Premiership and the Champions League and you're not going to get anything else, I think they'll be okay.
They'd be happy.
Yeah.
Yeah, they'd be happy. The World Cup's a funny thing because you can have the best player in the world, like a Messi at some point, or a Ronaldo, who can't ever win because just the countries they come from are just not the same soccer talent, football talent than like France or Italy or whomever, Brazil. It's just like a really, really difficult thing to contend against.
Yeah, like this is the thing. Don't say that to Messi because he'll start to cry because Diego Maradona, like like Colombian soldier marching man. That's like, yeah, he literally dragged that Argentinian team
kicking and screaming
off the neck. Yeah, it was like,
he had a chance. Yeah. Messi had a good chance. He had a good chance in 2014, but that German machine was just too much for him to handle.
The whole thing is, yeah, Messi, he's great and all, but like, yeah, I think his time, like, and I say this, being like one of the greatest players in the world, his time is coming to an end. And like, you know what I mean? Like, he's been in one team and like his time, who knows if he'll be getting another chance with the national team to win anything. It's looking like unlikely. Barcelona, his team from being a boy up until now. Let's just say Barcelona, I can't see them doing anything major anytime soon because that's a team that's lost its direction. And like, it's a very tough place to be. Like, going from, I've won everything, I was winning everything. No, you can't win something, and no, you're kind of in the sort of tailspin. You're kind of like, what do I do now?
You know, I'm gonna make a jump here, but it's on a tangential point to what you just said, which I think is a really interesting story happening right now, which in the swarm of news we have, it's definitely not a priority, but it's just fascinating to me. Mike Tyson was that guy who was on top, who had a really successful career. There was definitely some other things happening in his life that are questionable, but from a boxing perspective was great. He came down in the sport, as you do when you get older as a boxer. It is tougher for you to maintain all the rigor, tough on the body. And now he's out there 54 years old training for a fight.
Yeah, don't get me wrong. When I think, did you see the video of him hitting the pads? Oh, yeah, God, terrifying.
Well, I will say this: Tyson, as a fighter, his style, because he's a small dude compared to the other height of the heavyweights in his class. His style of fighting was being quite nimble. He was a guy who would slip constantly. He was a guy who would duck and move and pop you with a good hook because he'd be inside the whole time. I think as you get older, just all that ATP in your body is just not the same amount that it used to be. That sort of muscle reaction is not going to be as fast. I still don't want to take a punch from him ever in my life, but I worry that he doesn't have quite the same speed and agility that was what made him big before, versus like a guy, for example, Tyson Fury. He's an agile and a big, fast-moving guy, and he doesn't punch as hard as, say, like Deontay Wilder does. But so when Wilder gets old, he's going to get slower. When Wilder gets slower, he's going to get knocked out more. Tyson Fury, for example, can kind of keep that nimble for a little while and make sure he can win the rounds. But ultimately, I don't know. Tyson it worries me. I don't know if he has the same kind of speed.
Like, with regard to Tyson, like, what I would say is, like, he like he would be able to do that fast, nimble movement, quick pace, like get inside, and he'll be able to do that for like if we're going with just when he came out, the whole sort of 12-round biscuit, no problem at all. Time is a son of a bitch, as we all know. What I would simply say is, yes, I reckon he can still do it, but he'll be doing it for 3 rounds, possibly 4. And then he'll be kind of gassed out. And then it's a sort of different kind of fight. Like with regards of his boxing, like IQ, which I consider very high. Who's he fighting again? Is it Roy Jones Jr.?
It is.
Yeah, and like I haven't really seen Roy Jones Jr. fight that much, but Roy Jones Jr. is no dummy either.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? And he's a hard hitter. Maybe kind of like a Deontay Wilder, but you know what I mean? It will be the first 3-4 rounds will be like kind of everything, and you'll most probably like go, oh my God, it's like when they were back in their prime. And then you're going to see it just drop off a cliff.
So that brings me to our previous conversation, because as a guy like Messi, who's lived his entire life as a footballer, as a guy like Tyson, who lived his entire life as a boxer, age, as you said, is a son of a bitch, and it catches up to all of us, and time is relentless in that pursuit. What is the best thing for a person who has dedicated their life to these types of endeavors, being at peak physical condition, do when they're at 50? Do they do a Mike Tyson and just keep it going any way they can? Do they do what others like Maradona did, coach a couple teams? Do you walk away from everything? It's so tough because your whole life, all your training, all your knowledge is in one thing. Or do you do what like Karl Malone did in the US for the Utah Jazz basketball team, open up a bunch of car dealerships and say, I'm out, this is going to be me as a local celebrity?
Yeah, like this is the thing, like filling that sort of like, is obsession the right word? Like that sort of ongoing compulsion, say, to be the best, slight obsession as well. If you don't find something else to fill that sort of void when it's gone, whatever form that might take, it spiral. You've seen it with a lot of celebrity, like who are in that field, sort of like spiral out because they don't have that sort of outtake. They don't have that sort of thing to like go, oh, okay, I'm fired up for the day, or like they're like, you kind of look at them and like, oh, yeah, you're not really physically doing it anymore, but you're not kind of mentally doing it anymore, and they've checked out. It's very rare that you've got someone who's like, okay, you know what, I was top of my game in the sport, and now I've switched and doing this. Like Ian Wright, for example, he was an Arsenal striker. He disappeared for a while and kind of appeared back in the world of punditry, like basically sport commentary, where he would be talking for a bit, then he disappeared for a bit, then he came back like this font of footballing knowledge. I mean, it was just like, yeah, this, that, and like his opinion when he gave it out was like rock solid. But he put all his time and energy like going, okay, I'm not a player anymore, but I have now become an authority on the sport I love. And he's taken it that direction. Same thing with John McEnroe. That they still want to be connected, but they still can do it that way. I think anyone who can't find something like that to carry on, then it's a totally different show. That's where you've reached the top of the mountain, you're coming back down, and the depression sets in, and then like, yeah, you go down different crazy paths, which can either lead you into a bad place, a worse place, or a place you never thought you'd actually ever see yourself in. And trying to get back to that sort of road of salvation is that much harder.
Fascinating as an idea in our life. We spend so much time doing so many things, and when those things are no longer part of our like day-to-day in and out, it's the idea with retirement. You know, if you and I one day decide to stop working full-time in any way, shape, and form, and we're like 65, 70, what are we going to do with our time? You know, what does one do when they're retired these days in the era that we live in? Is retirement even a thing anymore?
well, like this is the thing. Like what I would simply say, take the sort of, if you look at the game of golf, you can play the game of golf from like when you're a young kid all the way up until like, yeah, the day you shuffle off this mortal coil. Like I do a podcast, you do a podcast, and like, you know what I mean? That like talking to interesting people on a day-to-day basis, that's never going to get old to me. I don't think that's going to get old to you either. But it's still something you can do from now until, yeah, the day you leave. And that's something which you can use to fill your time. Sometimes, yes, it can take up a lot of time. Sometimes it can just be like a couple of hours a day and you're done. But that's the lucky thing we have here right now. There is more options to do other things. And like, yeah, podcasting for me, I can see this being a greater and greater part of my life as time goes on. And I don't, like, right now, it's almost a year for me doing podcasting. And I don't see this getting any time old for me in the next like 5 years, 10 years, 20. And like, yeah, I'll take that forward. And like, you know what I mean? If certain aspects of my life slow down, or if this picks up, I'll still be going. Yeah, but what about yourself? Like you work quite a hectic job yourself for a rather large company. I say it. How do you see it?
You know, I don't know that I have my answer for you. You made a very, very eloquent and very wise point, and I think in a rare moment of just fully conceding my idea that I haven't thought that far ahead. I think a lot of my life has been spent trying to plan the future, and I did do that a lot. I tried to become a doctor. I tried to become like a tech giant person in San Francisco. I tried to be an expat in the UK. Most of those things went very differently than the original plan. I think I moved out to the UK thinking about a year or 2 years would be the most I'd be here. Like really trying it out, traveling a bunch, sort of just like coasting, getting back to San Francisco, going back to the same life as if nothing changed. And 3.5 years later, and a pandemic in, like obviously all that changed. And I'm obviously not a doctor, and I'm obviously not like a tech mogul of any sort of startup world, VC man or whatever. So I don't know. If I'm honest with you, I think I stopped trying to think of what might happen when this is all done, more so just to see how I feel when that actually comes. Because I have a feeling that 35-year-old Abhishek trying to tell 70-year-old Abhishek what's up is going to be really, really dumb.
But what I would simply say is this. After the pandemic, whatever form or shape the world takes from that point, if we go back and working from offices, or if we're like more sort of remote working, or like, you know what I mean? This whole period in time, people living through it, I think this is the generation, and this goes from like boomer, Gen X, millennial, Gen Z to Gen Alpha, which I found out is a thing only about a week ago. But I think this is going to be the sort of one sort of thing which is going to be like that sort of key point where people are like, yeah, that was a real poignant moment in our lives. And yeah, I was about to step right, but instead of doing that, I'm going to step left and maybe see what that takes me. Like, got to remember, there is still a whole host of options in this lockdown world we can all take up and what we can embrace. It just comes down to the willingness to like, oh yeah, let me take this opportunity. And look, you may have not been a doctor, you may not have been a tech mogul, and like the whole thing, like you are an expat at this present time, living in one of the greatest cities of the world, London. So like, look, and all I've got to simply say is, who knows where that's going to take you? You never know. You might be living in the south of France a year from now, like raising up a glass of wine and going, yeah, love London, but the south of France with this beach is the thing. You know,
yeah.
Don't know. But what I'd simply say is, still be open to embrace whatever life throws your way, because with that, yeah, great things come from it. And look, like, you know this because look, you may have come across over, like, come to the UK and everything like this, and now you've done a podcast first season, and, like, you know what I mean, you didn't need to do that. You could have had quite a simple, like, easy life with it. Just like, I've done my job, damn, I'm done. But you're, after this, you got another interview you said you were going to do, and, like, you know what I mean, just talking, getting it out there, getting out there. So look, yeah, I'm sure.
No, that's true. It's true. I will say that one of the kind of the better things I chose to do in my last couple of months of was just that podcast, that decision to start my own show. What I did to do that was just looking around at all the people that I met and seeing all these people make the same decisions that you're kind of saying right now, which is path in the road, was going to take a right, decided to take a left, and here's where I am. And I was lucky to meet like 17 really incredible people last year with astounding stories of, you know, being PhDs in psychology, leaving Syria during a war, meeting their wife when they were gate crashing a wedding, to, you know, everything in between. And this year is going to be an interesting one. The questions that have been coming up and the people I've so far, you know, begun talking to cover things that really are in our world today. You know, we're discussing things like Yemen. We're talking about Black Lives Matter. We're talking about the military. We're talking about illegal immigration. We're talking about the Me Too movement. We're going to cover people doing really cool things like looking and learning into instruments and just never having done that before. And I think the one sort of energy that I get from everybody is just the sort of direction that the world pulls you. I think anybody who would be really open to the rest of the world is one who's not trying too hard to force the direction, but is also really willing to let, sort of like, strap a leash around their waist and attach it to a really scruffy dog and say, like, let's go and see where you want to go today. And that sort of, I guess that sort of way of living is what brought people to do really amazing things. And there's a lot of failure. I think the majority of people on my podcast have had some sort of failure, major sadness. A couple of people lost their parents here and there, but there's also a lot of, like, resolve, which I really, really liked. And yeah, it's one of the benefits of having done that show.
Mm-hmm. And, like, this is the whole thing, like, 17 amazing people you've met. And, like, look, I'm sure, like, years before, you most probably met people, like, here, there, like, on sort of passing acquaintances. But when you're sort of out at a dinner party and stuff like this, you might have a conversation, about a 15-minute conversation with them. And you might have a conversation with someone else. But you're like, oh, yeah, I remember this person. They came from, I think Yemen, but yeah, I'm not 100% sure. Seemed like a really nice person. But now you kind of get into the depths. You get sort of that rich, like, thick, creamy conversation where you're like, okay.
Yeah. It's actually funny you mentioned that. That was the purpose. The show's called One Simple Question, and the real, I guess, ethos behind doing it that way was because I was exactly in those situations where I'd be at a dinner party or a first date when I was still single, or just meeting a friend of a friend, and we'd have this like a resume oriented conversation where it's like, I mean, me and you have been talking now for almost an hour, and we haven't really talked very much about what you do for a living, where do you live, like who your parents are, anything like that. We didn't really get into the stuff that would be deemed, I mean, information about you, but probably not a lot about you. And I was doing that with a lot of folks where I was just having these resume conversations and I didn't feel any value or energy. But every now and again, I'd get this really interesting thing where I would just hear something somebody said, like, oh, I served for this many years in Iraq, or my parents are from Syria, or, when I came out to my mother, she didn't talk to me, that kind of stuff. And you'd hear these things and you'd be like, wait, let's pause on the train that we're kind of going down. Let's actually get out and let's walk and look at this a little bit more deeply and investigate more. And then after, 20, 30 minutes of that conversation, you're suddenly just enveloped. And I will say I've done this in the weirdest places, like very loud bars where I'm sitting there talking to somebody about what their profession is and the psychology around, inflection and face and how our words actually mean a little, but the inflection and the way that we deliver them mean a lot more. And just fascinating. So I'm really happy I have a chance to do that. And that's the premise of the show. Like, I'll ask a very simple question. You know, what do you do? Where are you from? How many kids were in your family growing up? And inevitably by 30 minutes in, it's going to be some wild ride. And you're like, how did we get here?
Hey, and like that's the power of great conversation. Like this is the thing. One of like one of the things I think is needed more in this world where you can communicate with everyone around the world in a matter of seconds. You can set up a broadcast in no time at all, just from the power of your phone and an internet connection, just not even an internet connection, it's a cell phone connection, is that the whole sort of way of like conversation has literally gone out of the window. Like you just like you get a press snippet here or like you get a banner headline of what someone said and that's it. Most people go down a rabbit hole of maybe they're enraged by that or they misunderstood what that person's trying to get across or they're not listening at all. But when people actually have proper conversations, when they actually talk, and like yeah, they might have two different like diametrically opposed views, but a bit by bit through that conversation, like, wait a second, yeah, I agree with that. I agree with that. Yeah, I agree. I don't agree with that. And then something new can come from it. But while you're not talking, while the world is screaming, while 280 characters is being used to broadcast everything, it ain't going to do jack for people. And it's just going to lead to a miserable state. But there is still hope for us all, I say.
Yeah. Powerful stuff. I do laugh sometimes to myself thinking that Twitter might be how like the stock market plunges or a war gets started because one idiot who's quite orange decided he wanted to yell at another person across the world via an app that he has literally no idea how it's built.
Yes, I think when whoever the next president is, I'm going to say in 4 years' time.
Let's just say whenever the next president comes in, because
Yeah,
it could be sooner. And I'm, you know, touch wood, it is.
I I'll say that, but yeah, yeah. Let's take the access away from Twitter, right into law. That's like yes, if you're president of these United States, like he or she cannot have Twitter or any form of digital communication without it going through a very strict lobby. But I like to tweet, no, not if
No,
you do this job. But yeah,
no.
we shall see. We shall see. Like, yeah, talking about November the 4th. How it it's like
Do you ever in your life, do you ever have a bad breakup?
yeah.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
think a lot of us have. A lot of us have. I mean, bless those who have not. They live in a beautifully ignorant world, and I'm jealous of them. But have you ever had a bad breakup? That feeling you have that next day, and the day after, and the week after was how I felt last time this all went down in November 2016. I felt like the country had just broken up with me, and I just had that feeling. And so after those bad breakups, it always takes a little bit of time to start dating again. But if you suddenly date again real soon, you're really scared of getting hurt and you're like, not sure I really have this in me. Should I be doing this? And that's exactly how I feel right now. Like I'm just scared. I'm scared November 4th. I just don't want to get hurt or whenever it is, honestly, because we have to mail in all our ballots at this point. So it could be November 15th, whatever it is. I'm just going to be real timid, if you will.
Because this is going to be, I think this is going to be the first time that you're not going to necessarily know the result on the actual night itself. It's
I
like,
mean, it'll be the first time in modern history, but I'm imagining like ages ago they didn't know either, you know, in like the 1800s, right? But we are just so desperate to get information right away. I'm okay. I voted by mail for a long time. Living abroad, you have to do that. Living in California before I was a resident, I had to do that. Being in Ohio and just not having time to go to the polls, just voting early and by mail, it's fine. It's all fine. Everybody's freaking out because for some reason, some person, some idiot pundit said more people will vote by mail and therefore it'll hurt one side versus the other, even though all the research says that's not the case. More people voting by mail just means the democracy kind of works a bit better.
oh, like, yes. Like, what I've got to say is good luck.
Hey, you know, I say good luck to you. as a Brit who's got until like whenever this deal comes in 2021 or whatever the hell is supposed to happen in Brexit. I forgot that was a thing the other day.
Look, this is the whole thing. At the 2020 has basically erased Brexit from people's minds for the most part. It's only until recently people are like, Brexit. Oh, wait. Oh, yeah, we're still doing that? Okay, look. It has been a ongoing saga, which is like, if it carries on for another couple of years, it's going to be equal to the MCU's Avengers, like first saga. And look, I got to the end of the whole Avengers thing. I'm like, I've spent enough time with you guys for a moment or two. Please go away for a few years, come back. And look, like, I think if you mention Brexit to anyone in this country, like, yeah, Brexit, they'll be like, shut up. I don't want to talk about it. Go away.
I will say James O'Brien on LBC radio is one of the best people that I've listened to about it. And I read his book recently too. And just the conversations I'll have with people are fascinating because it reminded me a lot about all do you remember the Irish border conflict that we were having like in 2016, 17, 18, that whole thing where that was the only bit of news we could talk about, and poor Theresa May was getting dragged through the coals for not knowing how to create a soft, hard border, which whatever the hell that means. And
yeah, no, it's just ridiculous. No. Cameron went, yeah, you know what? We're going to have a referendum. Whatever you guys choose, I'm here with you.
Oh,
the end.
Forget that guy.
I was like, yeah. 2 days afterwards, like, yeah, you know what? Bye-bye. It's like Theresa May came in. I was like, oh, God bless her cotton socks. Like, the way I see Theresa May, like, she is a great second in command. Like, trust, like, if you have her on your team as your second, you are going, like, forget, you are going to win. She will help you and like do all the things you need to do to get you there. She just kind of doesn't know that leadership thing, and like maybe she had waited 3-4 more years, she might have been there. Okay, and God bless the.
Can I ask?
Yeah.
Can I ask quickly, without thinking too hard about this? How long was Theresa May prime minister?
About 3 years.
Yeah, isn't that a lot longer than originally? Like I thought that was like, yeah, maybe like a year or 2 years or something. She was there for a long time.
Oh, she was there for a healthy chunk of time.
Yeah.
And like this is the thing, and like she basically she was given a poison chalice. I'll give that due. She was given a poison chalice, and like I would say, even if she was like the hand of God came down and anointed her the best leader of all, like from time immemorial, she would have had a nigh on impossible job.
Yeah.
Get those chimps in the Houses of Commons to like fall into line. And now we've got the blonde orangutan in the form of Boris Johnson. Look, God bless his heart. Like, yeah, he got them to fall into line and get one coherent, like one voice to go, yes, this is the way we need to go. But let's just say he was helped out extremely by the Labour Party, which, look, I come from a part of London which has always voted Labour, been Labour. Like, you cut anyone, they bleed red through and through for that Labour Party. I looked at the Labour Party and I was like, you guys have no clue. Look, one of the things as time goes by, you sort of switch from being a sort of idealist, this is the way everything should be, to like going, you know what, I want things to be like that, but how are you going to actually make it work economically? Because look, if you can't afford to pay for this, that, there is no point in trying to chase that sort of utopian idea or ideal you have. And Labour had nothing at all. And let's just say, going into like some socialist sort of paradise, the last time like the Labour Party talked like that, there was a thing called the Winter of the Discontent in the 70s. Rubbish piled up high, things like rolling blackouts, and the world was not good in the UK. Now, I've got to say, Labour needs to get its house in order. And yeah, the pandemic might help them a little, but if they don't get, like, they've got 5 years to do it before the next election. it can be done, but they don't seem to still be doing anything to be like, okay, right. They're not giving a unified voice to go, this is the way it should be, or like, you don't really hear them at this present time.
Maybe it'll be a work in progress. Maybe it's like that. You said 5 years. Maybe they'll take their time and like build a coalition forward. I think in the U.S., the first year of Trump was that the Democratic Party was just in a way and wasn't totally sure what they were going to do, and then came out of that with a little bit more gusto at some point in the next elections that happened. So yeah, perhaps it's like, what's his name, Keir Starmer, I think his name is. Maybe he'll be the golden goose a little bit, or it could be that he just helps to bring out the next kind of leader. But
I think
yeah.
I think he'll be most probably the person to bring out the next leader. There's certain things they need to sort of get rid of, and once they get that into place, we shall see. With regards to the sort of Democratic Party over stateside, it's kind of like it with the Labour Party here. It's like they don't want to win. If you know what I mean, I could be wrong, but it just seems like they just don't want to win. It's just like the way they picked who's going to be leading them, and like how they've kind of like gone into everything. It's just like, yeah.
You know what? It's tricky because I think the idea of it being a monolith is incorrect. I mean, there's two sides to the political coin in the U.S., and kudos to the UK for at least having more than two parties. There are two major ones, but there's some other ones in there. But the fact that there's two parties in the US makes it so a guy like Joe Biden and a guy like Bernie Sanders, who ostensibly sit on the same side of the aisle in that regard, have vastly different opinions on how to be successful as a country. And it's going to take Bernie kowtowing a bit to Joe to make sure that his supporters follow up with Joe and want to vote for him. But ultimately that whole like system, it doesn't work well that way. And I mean, the founding fathers didn't build a party-based system into the Constitution in the US, and as a result it really doesn't hold a lot of water. And that's where everybody's getting a little bit more tense. I mean, here too, but just in the world in general, it's them versus us. It's one side versus the other in any way, shape, and form. And it's like we're all trying to conflate the others so that we can have a collective group to be angry at. And there's never a collective group. Like, I mean, I live in London. I'm an American expat who's of Indian descent from the US. I live next to two people who have pretty much that exact same demographic to them. And we're three people who are really, really different. We don't necessarily agree on everything. We're not in disagreement about a lot of stuff, but to say that any one group all thinks a lot alike is just incorrect, period. Two people barely think alike.
Yeah. And it's like, there are differences amongst us all, but it doesn't mean we need to be at each other's throats, as you said. Yeah. And there just seems to be a lot of throat gouging in the world today, and it's just, kind of look at it and go, okay, like, so come November the 4th, I kind of look upon it and go, okay, buckle up. This is going to be a little bit more than tense than a hanging Tad, than in Florida,
Hanging Chads. Haven't heard of hanging Chad in a while. I will say this. After November 4th, regardless of what happens, there's a lot of big issues in the U.S. that we need to tackle. If it's the same guy or a new guy, it'll be a new person later on for sure. The problems are systemic. The idea that Black people in the U.S. are not even in a police state sort of treated differently, but in a hospital state treated differently, in a educational state treated differently. The fact that, immigration is this big, terrifying monolith to people that, again, as we just said, not every group coming in is the same. And the fact that the economy is one that your healthcare is tied to. So to have healthcare in the US, you have to have a job. In a pandemic, if you lose your job, you lose your healthcare. In a pandemic, you're going to get sick. In a pandemic, you're probably going to die. That there's a lot of things. And I tell people, don't think of the US as this like really, really, really progressive country that is right up there with all the European countries too. Think of it as 50 different countries, much like the EU, that have 50 very different opinions that might agree on a bunch of things, but ultimately have their own laws and their own shapes. So if you're unemployed in California, you can get healthcare, but if you're unemployed in Alabama, you won't get healthcare. And it's important to realize that the US is a lot more like that EU in that way, that there's, trade borders are open. The same currency is for the US, most of the EU, but for the argument here in the US. And there is sort of one governing body, but it's really those states that do most of the work.
Yeah, I think that's been kind of highlighted to a lot of people because, well, just with the way the lockdown was, like the first lockdown was implemented across the whole of the country in the States. It was just like, okay, it was like, okay, New York's just locked down, but Florida, you're still open. What's going on here? It was like party central, and it was like 2 weeks into New York's lockdown. It was like, okay, everyone left Florida, went around the country. It was like, okay, and different places were just locking down slowly but surely until I can't remember which was the last state, if it was
Georgia, I think, right?
Georgia?
One of those, Georgia, maybe.
Yeah, maybe Georgia, maybe Nevada. No, yeah, but it was just like, okay. So you kind of saw that. I saw that from sitting over here in the UK. And when it was like here in the UK, it was like, yeah, you're all locked down. And it was pretty much like finger snap lockdown. And it's sort of changed now where people are now sort of like coming out of it in sort of different rates. Scotland's kind of doing one thing, and the UK is doing another. Wales is doing another thing. And like, yeah, that's where it's kind of wonky at this present time, and just want to know this is what we're going to do. One coherent voice.
Yeah.
But you know how it is. You know how it is. Oh, my. Okay. Now, while we're about to wrap this up, now, seeing as I will call upon my cosmic powers, I can, yes, I do have cosmic powers. Don't laugh, please. Straight face, serious. Like, yeah, call upon my, yep, thank you. There you go. Calling upon my cosmic powers. Yeah, if I could grant you one wish, what would that be?
If I could have one wish,
Just
I think I would probably wish for people in the world, for like whatever genetic or societal thing is in us that makes us scared of the other human. I would like to wish that everybody would suddenly realize that all humans are the same species. And I think that would be my one wish, because I feel like so much of our torment of the world and so much of like the struggles that we have is because somebody sees something different, whether that's their sexuality, the color of their skin, the gender, the location that they're from, and they get scared of that thing. And we're way too tribal as a world. And I would love to wish that would just go away. And then we'd all just kind of realize like, hey, much like we see two dogs who are not the same like type of dogs sniff each other and say, what's up? How you doing? We could all kind of do that across the world and not care anymore.
That'll be an interesting one for dinner parties, but nevertheless, I'll get working on that for you. Yeah, I'm liking that. My cosmic powers are going to be slightly strange, but I'm sure I can get on it somehow. Can you tell the lovely people how they can get in contact with you out there in this big?
Yeah, of course. My podcast is called One Simple Question. You can get it anywhere you get a podcast. I'm on Twitter. I'm on Instagram. It's One Simple Quest, all spelled out. And then if you want to just go to the website, super easy. All the stuff is listed there, onesimplequestion.co. Easiest way to get in touch with me is through an email, through a message. I love to talk to people, love to hear the stories. So let me know what you think.
Superb. What I'll also do, I'll put that information into the show notes so people can find him. Find him now. Yes. Like if you do see him in public, maybe not the dog sniffing bit. That might be a different thing. We're not ready for that insanity just yet. But nevertheless, Sir, I'd like to say thank you for coming on today. It has been a pleasure and an honor. I'm definitely going to have to get you back on. More conversation has to be needed. Yeah, maybe like see what sports you might get into, but that's another story.
Yeah. Thanks so much for having me. This is awesome. This is so much fun to do.
Pleasure. The pleasure's all mine. As I raise up my hands, I'm saying this for people who might be listening to this on the audio. As I raise up my hands in a victorious way. But what I like to say is thank you to my friends, my warriors out there, my life warriors, for staying to this point. I want to say stay safe, stay well, be awesome, be excellent, be fantastic, be all the positive bees you can be in this world and then some. Have a great day, guys. Peace. And we are